In this video we will have a look at how to import data from an Excel sheet to a table in SQL Server, and also how to export some data to an Excel sheet. I will start by creating a new database, and I go to Object Explorer and right click over Databases, select New Databases, and I name the database Car Database and click OK. Then I go back to Object Explorer and click the F5 button to refresh, and then I should find my database, new database here, named Car Database. And I can expand this folder and go to tables, and I will see that for now I only have my system tables and file tables. But we will let the SQL Server create a new table for us when we import the data. So we go to Car Database and right click and select Tasks and Import Data. And then a wizard will start, and we click Next, and we can select a data source, and we will import from Excel. So I will select Microsoft Excel. You can see that we can import from other sources, Access for instance, or if we have a CSV file, for instance, a comma separated file, then we can use flat file source. But now we will use Excel, and we have to specify a format, and we will use the 2007 format. And then we can browse to find our file, and now we will use this Car Database Excel file, which is a workbook which consists of 2 worksheets with data. And the first row has column names. We check this one because this is how the worksheet is organized. And then we can click Next. And now we will specify the destination, and we want to import data to SQL Server. So we will select the SQL Server Native Client 11. And you write your server name, and then you can select all your databases. And we select the Car Database and click Next. We will copy data from one or more tables or views. And here we will see our Excel sheet from the workbook that we selected earlier. And now I will select the worksheet named Car. So I check this one, and I will let the SQL Server create a table named Car because I have no tables yet. And I click here and I remove this $sign. It shall only be Car as the name. So here we have the Excel part, and here we have the SQL Server part. We can also have a preview if you want, and here I see my data in my Excel sheet, and it's 9 rows with data. So OK, and then we can go to choose Next, and we will run immediately. So Next again and Finish. And all the rows were imported successfully. So then I can close this, and I go to Tables. To see them, I have to click the F5 button again to refresh, and now I see I have a table named Car. I can right click on it and select top 1000 rows. Then I will see that the 9 rows are imported to SQL Server from Excel. In the Excel workbook I have another sheet with 2 rows of with data. So if I want to add those 2 rows to this table named Car, then I can go back to Car Database, right click, and I go to Tasks and Import Data, and click the Next button. And again I will have Excel as the source, and I will have the same worksheet. So I go to Browse and find this Car Database, and the format was selected correctly now, and the first row has column names. So Next, and I have to select SQL Server Native Client 11 because I want SQL Server as the destination. I will import to SQL Server. And the car database will be used also now. So next, I copy data from one or more tables or views. And the other Excel sheet, which is in the same workbook, is named More Cars. So now I select More Cars. This has 2 rows. And I go here. I will not import them to More Cars, because if I do that, SQL Server will create a new table with that name. But I will go to this menu and select car, which is the table that SQL Server created when we imported the last time. So now we will have from More Cars sheet in Excel to the table car in SQL Server. And I can have a preview if I want to see what data that is to be imported. And I see here that I have these 2 rows with CarMake B and CarMake C. Okay, and then I click next. And I will have a format warning, this money field, but that should be no problem. And I click next and run immediately and finish. And all the rows were imported successfully, it says here. So I close, I go to car database, I click the F5 button to refresh, go to tables, right click over car and select top 1000 rows. And now we can see that I have these 2 rows. Sometimes when you import from Excel, it happens that it also imports some null values, like we see here. And if that happens, they are easy to remove by writing a simple query. So I will do that now. So I go to the query window. Just be sure that it says car database here, so we query that database or that. And now I write delete, and I will delete from the table named car, which we have imported the data to, where reg number, which is this column here, and we can use is null. Then we will select and delete rows that contains a null value in this reg number column. So I run this one, execute, 7 rows affected. So now I can go to tables, I click F5 to refresh, right click over car and select top 1000 rows, and now I see that I have removed my. And now we will do exactly the opposite operation. Instead of importing from Excel to SQL Server, we will export the data we now have stored in this car table to the Excel workbook. And we will let SQL Server create a new sheet in our Excel workbook and store the new data there. So that will be 11 rows with data. So I go to car database, right click, I select tasks and export data, and the wizard will start. I click next, and the data source is now SQL Server, because now I want to export from SQL Server. And then I have to select SQL Server native client 11, and we have the server name and the same database as earlier. And I go to next, and the destination will now be Excel, because we are exporting to Excel. So I select Microsoft Excel and I select the 2007 format. First row has column names. We have to select the worksheet, and that is car database, the same as earlier. And now I click next, and we will also now copy data from one or more tables or views. Click next. And at the left here I see my source, which is the server and the table named car in the car database. So I have to select this because that's my only choice, the only table I have. But here on the other side, I don't want to export them to a sheet named car. I want them exported to a new sheet. I can call it car backup. and I click next and run immediately. Next, finish, and I see that my export succeeded, so I can close this and I can go to Windows Explorer and open my Excel workbook, and hopefully we now have a new sheet in that workbook. So if I look down here, I have car backup, so if I go to that sheet, I will see all my rows are exported to Excel. So the clue is to go to the car database, right click and select tasks, and either import data or export data and follow the wizard.